The story of change and progress that took this rough dirt runway and turned it into one of the fastest growing airports in the country begins in the 1920s, when the Oakland Airfield captured the imaginations of its East Bay neighbors.
At that time, there were 5 children, and my father had, or the family had, a 1927 or 1928 Studebaker sedan. And I do remember our all piling into it and going down to the airport. It was Sunday after church. We went down to see the planes take off and come in.
Those visits to the airport inspired Maggie G. to become a pilot herself. She joined the Women's Air Force in World War II.
Every time a plane came down, I think, people clapped. This person has been up in the air soaring with the birds and the clouds. The Oakland Airport had not been there, and I had not seen planes fly. Who knows what I would have done during the war.
It was really the only airport around. San Francisco wasn't as big.
Leo Bruning was a teenager when he and his friends came to watch the airplanes.
On the weekends, it was pretty crowded out there because people would flock out there. A lot of them wanted to go up for a ride, and these operators would take you up for a ride for $5, and fly you around for about a half hour and bring you back.
The airport at the time was little more than a runway, but it was the first in the Bay Area, and it's always had good weather, been easy to get to, and convenient for pilots and passengers alike.
Oakland had less wind, less fog, and fewer hills close at hand. It just took off, so it quickly became the major airfield of the West Coast at that time.
The federal government gave Oakland just the boost it needed, establishing a West Coast airmail center here in 1927.
The secret for dominance for airports at that time was to be the base of operations for an airline that had an airmail contract. Once they knew that they were the western terminus for the transcontinental air route, then they knew they had a guaranteed amount of business.
For Lindbergh, oh what a flying fool was he. Lindbergh, his name will live in history over the old.
And soon after Charles Lindbergh crossed the Atlantic in 1927, the Army announced that 2 of its pilots, Lester Maitland and Albert Hegenberger, would attempt to fly to Hawaii in June of that year, and they'd take off from Oakland.
Pacific was more of a challenge, and in those years, 1927, it was doubtful if you could make it. So it was really precarious and bold and daring of anyone to even imagine they could fly to Hawaii.
The first thing they needed was a better runway.
27 days, working day and night, round the clock with mule teams. The port commissioners had an airfield that was 7,000 some odd feet long, allowing the Army to make that takeoff.
The 2 Army pilots reached Hawaii in a plane called the Bird of Paradise in 25 hours and 50 minutes. 2 weeks later, 2 civilians, Emery Bronte and Ernest Smith, took off in their monoplane, the City of Oakland, and made it to Hawaii 14 minutes faster. The 2 flights were the first in a series of historic events in Oakland during the summer of 1927.
The amazing thing about Oakland Airport is that even before the first building was built, and they laid out this emergency, quickly built long runway, they had like 3 famous flights that made world history. It's just extraordinary that Oakland got off, as I say, to a flying start.
But the excitement around the Oakland Airport was just beginning.